So tell us about when you finally ended up going to the White House and started the first time. Do you remember the first time you sat in the White House and were with the press
Kennedy
corps?
said Helen Thomas would be a nice girl. She'd get that pencil and paper out of her head. I remember. And I was a third man on the totem pole, and Merriman Smith was the head of the bureau, our big bureau, 3 people. But he was a crackerjack reporter and very egoistic, very demanding, but he knew everything. And he had been at the White House from FDR on, and he wrote a story on New Year's Eve saying that Roosevelt had black-eyed peas and this and that for dinner. And the editor said, "How did you know that?" He said, "Well, doesn't everyone?" He came from the South, obviously.
Everybody eat black-eyed peas.
But he was really a great reporter. I mean, spot reporter. And he always knew to have the window down. At that time, there were no cell phones. So there was one telephone car, so-called, provided by AT&T, and the phone was in the front seat. And Smitty, who had been so, knew the routine, jumped into the front seat in Dallas. And he also had been a gun buff, and he kept the window down always, no matter what the weather. And he heard 3 shots.
Now, you're talking about when Kennedy went to Dallas?
Kennedy.
Okay,
That's
during
right.
the assassination?
That's right.
Okay.
1964, yeah. And, I am jumping around, but Smitty heard the 3 shots, and he knew the difference between a backfire and gunshots. And he picked up the phone. Mainly, I'm trying to say that there was not the kind of communications.
Right.
Sometimes we'd have to run 2 or 3 blocks and to hold the phone when you knew something was breaking. You have some kid put up, hold the phone or say it's out of order. Or
So you always kind of knew where every payphone was in town or free phone that you could get
near
to?
the beat. That's what your head
the beat.
stood. In fact, when Roosevelt died at Warm Springs, the reporters were called to the cottage where FDR died, and the first thing he looked for was the phone. And so anyway, in Dallas, the press...
Were you in Dallas at the time?
No, I was at the White House. And so the press was in the 3rd car. There was the presidential limousine, Secret Service car, and then the wire services. So he's in the 3rd car. And during the rush to Parkland Hospital, he was phoning in one bulletin after another to Dallas, and the AP man was beating on him to try to grab the phone. There was just one phone. As I say, now we have cell phones and so forth. But anyway, when he got to the Parkland Hospital, by this time they had taken Kennedy's, he was really comatose, body into the hospital, and Smitty was running into the hospital, and he saw the President's Secret Service agent, Jackie's Secret Service agent, pounding on the car, saying he's dead. And so he ran in, called in that bulletin, but it wasn't. His death wasn't officially announced for an hour later. But Smitty always knew that you move with the crowd. I mean,
and
you move with the official.
He was one of the 3 you worked with through the White House beat.
That's right. And when Johnson was getting ready to leave the hospital, the White House people told Smitty, "Let's go." Told the AP man, "Let's go. I mean, we've got to move." Going to Air Force One and Dallas, and so. And
was he on Air Force One when they came back? Was he with them? Was he one of the photographers who took the picture with LBJ being sworn in?
The AP guy didn't go because he had not covered the White House regularly. He didn't understand. You move, even if you're calling in a bulletin or are a flash. I mean, you move with them. And so Smitty was the only wire service man on Air Force One when they took off.
Interesting.
So he covered not only the assassination, but the swearing in of a new president, LBJ.
Remember that time? I was in California at the time. So let's go back a little bit about, you were married. How did you meet your husband?
He was covering the White House for the Associated Press.
So he was in the White House room with you at the time, too? One of the reporters in there?
I was with him.
Okay, okay. Did you think he was pretty cute?
I thought he was a great reporter. He was a magnificent reporter for Associated Press. He was a widower, and he had been there since FDR, since Roosevelt. He was kind of a favorite of Roosevelt. But his great skill, his great forte, was to do the wrap-up story. We used to call him habeas corpus because he used to cover every funeral of the big VIPs. Anyway, at the end of World War II, there were teletype machines. No, there were no computers, and he's named Doug Cornell, and he had dispatches from London, Paris, Tokyo, Berlin, Washington, and so forth. He looked at them, stood over a teletype machine, started dictating. The editor came over and said, "Let it roll." And he dictated the end of a war for an hour and a half to the teletype operator.
Wow.
It was magnificent. I mean, it had gathered all the facts, and so that was his great
great gift.
Yes,
was
exactly.
Summarizing
talent.
So how long were you married?
11 years.
And you got married later in life. It wasn't.
Only at 51.
Yeah, that was only. So what was that adjustment like?
I never wanted to be married, and they were not knocking down the doors. I can tell you. Who would want to marry Matt Loudmouth?
What was that like for you making that adjustment? You've been independent all your life. You had this incredible, fascinating career.
It was
like?
tough. My independence meant everything to me, so I didn't realize I'd be scared to death. But I decided, I got to try it.
You got to try it. That's the way to look at marriage. You got to try it.
No, I mean there were not many suitors. I can assure you.
But it
wallflower.
So it must have been interesting because he knew right from the get-go you were very outspoken about what you thought. And he must have been very confident in who he was, that it wasn't something...
He's a very silent man. He had to be.
I understand.
These aggressive women.
None of which are here. So let's talk about, what do you think, looking back on the scope of your life, you've witnessed some of the most incredible things through history in your lifetime. What do you think were some of the most important things that happened in our history to you, in your mind?
Being on Air Force One, going to China, when there's a 20-year hiatus where we had no relations with China at all, the U.S., there was always great curiosity about China. So I think that every reporter in Washington, when Nixon announced he was going, wanted to be on that trip. But the press corps was very limited, and of course all the network chiefs wanted to go. Barbara Walters had an executive with her carrying her a hat box, and as I say, everybody in journalism wanted to be on that trip because it was so history-making. And I think it really gave Nixon a very special look, but being on the wire service, I was able to be on it too. And it was like landing on the moon. Everything was a story. We thought that the world was just hanging on every word we thought, at least, what they looked like, what they were wearing, and so forth. I'd call my office in the morning, and I would say, I'm about to cover President Nixon, Chou En-lai, Chinese foreign minister, and so forth, and they're going to be meeting. No, wait a minute. I want to know what your room is like, what you're having for breakfast, and nobody editor ever asked me what I'm having for breakfast before, but everything, every detail. And I left this wake-up call for 6 a.m., and these rooms were like YWCA, you know, but they did have tea and candy. So I got this call, wake up! I thought I was home.